Yo,
What up, Jay?
good? How we doing?
Good, man, good.
Let's do this, man. Let's get set up.
Hey, Jay, thanks for stopping over.
Hey, no problem, man.
Cool. I want to take this opportunity to set up the scene as we record our first session.
For sure.
Face to face with Tarrance Weaver. But I'm Tarrance Weaver, and this is Jay behind the camera. You guys already met him.
Yes, sir.
But I wanted to show you guys something that means a lot to me. This is my first printout of my book, Face to Face with Life Meets Reality. And this is the only one that's in the blue and gray color. But I actually printed it out for my son to sign and put it on the wall. But the intensity in his eyes is what I love, because that same intensity that I feel like Jesus is given in this look, in this picture, is the same intensity I felt in my heart as I was writing this book, between the chapters, between the pages of this book. But one thing I want to do was show you guys today that the hurt and the pain and the struggle that I went through in life wasn't for nothing. Like, the hurt that I felt as I wrote this book was from my brother dying and my mom, going through the things that she went through. It's the same story that a lot of us have. And it took me to my darkest hours where I ended up going to the moment of having a gun to my head and want to give up on life. But I wanted to take this opportunity to give you, the readers or the viewers, a chance to hear me read. I'm going to read from my first chapter, My Darkest Hour. If you got a moment, I would love for you to join me with me. Face to Face, Where Life Meets Reality by Tarrance Weaver. This is my darkest hour. One afternoon during the spring of 2012, I found myself sitting quietly in my 2-bedroom apartment. I had no clue that my reality would soon clash with my fate. And then suddenly, I realized that I'd been running from my past and I had demons to confront immediately as my future was so uncertain. I sat quietly on the bed and began to cry uncontrollably, pouring out my heart to God. One would think that if there ever was a time for him to prove himself to be the living God, that this would be the time. I mean, the theory of relativity is when a minute seems like an hour and an hour seems like a minute came into full effect. This was truly my darkest hour, and it was stretched over a 3-day period of time. My brother was killed by his father-in-law on December 10th, 1994, and I never faced or dealt with a loss like that. At the time, being a freshman in high school, I could never paint a portrait in my mind of a 12-gauge shotgun shell ripping through the once living body of my brother, my role model, and the only father figure that I had at the time. My heart raced and my lungs gasped for air because his life had just released it. I've heard that God will give you no more than you can bear, but he would soon test those words with me. Due to my mom losing her son in such a violent way, her future became her past as she lived off the memories of what used to be instead of what's to come. She became depressed, as most mothers would after such a life-changing event, and relied heavily on alcohol to ease her pain. Just a little over 4 years, she gradually got worse until the excessive alcohol consumption finally took her life on January 22nd, 1998. During my senior year in high school, I can recall sitting in the hospital room and this awkwardness that neither one of us wanted to talk about fell upon us. And finally, in a soft and weakened voice, she said, "Baby, come here and have a seat," calling me to her bedside. I can tell from the trembling tone of her voice that this conversation would be unlike any other that we've ever had. As I approached the right side of her bed, I could see her frail body attempting to lift up and turn onto her side to face me. I gazed into her very weak and slightly yellowed eyes, and she said, "Baby, no one's ever going to take care of you like I have." I mean, as any naive teenager would have done, I just fired off with the first thing that came to my mind. I said, "Oh, Mom, whatever. You're going to be all right." To which she replied, "No, listen. Baby, no one's ever going to take care of you like I have." It was at that point that I realized what she was saying, even though she didn't say it. As my worst fears raced to become my living nightmare, she started coughing and placed a cloth over her mouth to suppress the noise. She would always hide little secrets from me, especially the ones that would break my heart. She would never tell me about the results from her previous doctor's visits, nor would she discuss how much time the doctor said she had left. But the following day, I entered into the hospital room and I realized that it was filled with all of my family members. It was then that I was presented with the hardest decision of my life. I was about to decide whether my mom or my best friend lived or died. I had to decide whether I should turn off her life support machine or keep it on. I mean, in a way I was thinking that she could live here for a while on this machine, and she would always be here for me to visit, to kiss, to hug, and to love. It was unclear, and I couldn't quite understand why this time was going to be any different from any other time that she's been in this position. And then I realized. The doctor grabbed me by the hand and he said, "Son, she will not recover this time around." He then told me that the yellowish tint in her eyes and the blood on the cloth from her coughing was an indication that her liver and her kidneys had failed. He said that she had already gone, and the only thing that was left was the shell of her body, because the machine was the only thing that was keeping her alive. I looked up from my eclipsed sunshine, giving them the answer that they wanted to hear, and I then exited the room with a closer relationship with death, anger, and hate towards God. How could he have designed such a perfect world and added me into this equation to leave me alone without the two closest people in my life? I can remember staring at her casket during the funeral, and my friends and family reassured me with the regular cliche that they were available if I needed anything, and that they understood how I felt. I mean, how did I feel? I was as lifeless as my mom's body. No one understood the level of pain and anger and fear that I felt inside of me. Unless you've lost your brother, your hero, and your father figure, and then shortly thereafter lost your mom and your best friend, and your only will for living, you really don't know how I felt. There are so many levels within each one of those categories that unless you're me and live my life, you couldn't truly understand. Shortly after the funeral, my biological dad told me that I was more than welcome to come live with him if I wanted to. My mom's side of the family was willing to take me in as well, but they suggested that I live with my father. Neither one of those answers were what I wanted to hear at the time. But my mom's last words resonated in my head. "Baby, no one's ever going to take care of you like I have." And she was right. They should have embraced me. They should have taken the time and made the decision for me. However, they didn't, and that was my confirmation that no one truly understood what I was feeling at that time. I thank God for touching my Uncle Chester's heart and allowing him to take in a son. My Uncle Chester was married to my Aunt Martha, my mom's eldest sister, and he became the father figure that I was searching for, and also became the son that he never had. It was now years later, and I found myself in my darkest hour. I sat for 3 days in my room, crying and confessing all of my hurts and fears and sins to God, but I still felt alienated by him. I was hoping to hear a deep voice or see a burning dresser, like the bush with Moses, but nothing ever happened. As the silence of my past started screaming loudly to the point where I couldn't bear it anymore, I slowly picked up my subcompact .40 caliber Springfield Armory pistol and I placed it to my head. I took a deep breath and exhaled very slowly as the next couple of seconds of my life moved slowly throughout my head. It was then and only then could I hear the birds chirping outside of my window. With my right hand trembling with the gun in it, I knelt on my right knee facing the bed, eager to meet my fate, when something came over me and said, "Pause."